Hi my loves, it's Aisling here and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, then thank you very much for joining me today, and if you are a frequent visitor to my channel, then thanks for returning. I had every intention of putting my foundation on this morning, but a package arrived and I was like, let's just start the video, we'll do the foundation later. I don't even have earrings in, I have no accessories on, I'm not prepared to film this morning, but this package, very special package arrived. So this is the Subculture palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills. You will see that from the thumbnail. This is it here. It's the only thing I got from Anastasia. It was packaged very well. I bought this on Wednesday the 25th of July. This actually did arrive yesterday. The FedEx man was like, oh, I called yesterday, you weren't here. I was at my course. This took 3 working days to get to me. How amazing is that? So this is what the palette looks like, and it comes in this green box. All the ingredients are listed on the back there, as well as the shades. There's a butterfly in this room. How odd. So you get this little leaflet inside, all the ingredients listed. This is what the palette looks like. Very similar on the outside to the Modern Renaissance palette. It feels exactly the same. My Modern Renaissance palette is filthy, and I suspect this possibly will get filthy as well because that's the same kind of like felt feel. This palette is well and truly loved by me. I have this palette a year. Let's see what the inside of this one looks like. This is what the inside of it looks like. Very exciting. You get a brush. I actually don't mind the brushes. A lot of people hate brushes that come with palettes, but I actually don't mind the one that comes with the Subculture. I will do up close swatches, everything like that, as well as applying it to my eyeballs. I get such a retro feel from the colors in this with the mustards and the greens. I am also getting a little bit of a feel of the, I can't remember that collection that came out from INGLOT. I'll try and find my palette of it actually. So the colors are not identical, but 2 winters ago this palette came out, or like these kind of shades came out from INGLOT, and you can see like the greens and like the muted purples, and I'm kind of getting that feel from this palette, just with the greens and the purples and stuff like that. I don't know. It wouldn't be necessarily a palette that I would be instantly drawn to, but because I loved the Modern Renaissance palette from Anastasia, it was the first and only palette and eyeshadows that I've ever used from Anastasia, and I loved it so much. My holy grail eyeshadow palette. I thought that this might be something interesting for me to try. This palette retails for $42, which I think equates to about €35. So it's not too expensive. It's not very high end, and it's not obviously drugstore. It's just somewhere in the middle. You'd pay an awful lot more for an Urban Decay palette, Smashbox palette, a MAC eyeshadow palette. You'd pay what, €75 for them here in Ireland. You get 14 shades in this. There is 0.7 grams of product per eyeshadow, and I think Anastasia's regular shades I think are 1.7 grams. I believe those eyeshadows retail for about $11. Watched one review on this, and it was the subscriber that sent it to me because I put out like a message on Twitter the other day that said I bought this, and I was worried because I heard there was duds going around. If you don't know what a dud is, it's basically like a faulty type of palette, like where it doesn't perform like the rest of them. And I was alerted to a girl named Alyssa Ashley. I will leave you a link to her video down below, and she was having a terrible time with this palette, so it kind of made me worry. So I'm gonna go and use this like I normally would with any eyeshadow palette, and I'm just going to go with my own instincts on it. This palette also will be available in Beauty Bay, I think Beautylish. I will link down any of the websites that I know it's going to be on. It's on Anastasia's website for now, and that's where I bought it, but I wouldn't recommend that if you live in Ireland because the shipping was like $14. This palette ended up costing me about $56 in the end, about €45. Not ideal, but I wanted to try it out for you guys, and the shipping was extremely quick, but Beauty Bay does just as quick shipping. I'm going to put some tape on my eyes. I always do that. I'm going to prime my eyelids with the Stay On Stray from Benefit. I'm going to set my eyelids with the light mineralized skin finish from MAC, and then I'll come back and we'll start doing the tutorial. I beg you to excuse this state of my eyebrows. I am growing them out to get them reshaped. I'm going to take this big fluffy brush. This is an M504 from Morphe. I'm going to go in with the shade Dawn just to kind of set down a little bit of a transition, a little bit of kickback there from that shadow. So far I'm happy with that Dawn shade. It's blending out quite well. There's no patchiness from it. It's very smooth on my eyelid. blending out really, really well. I'm going to take my INGLOT brush, and this is the 46SS brush. I'm going to go in with New Wave. I'm really drawn to this shade here. It looks super pretty. Again, I'm just dabbing my brush in, and there is an awful lot of kickback coming off the shadow. It is super pigmented. You can see that there on the brush. So I'm just applying that on top. I'm taking the tiniest amount of product as well, guys. I'm gonna go back in with that original brush that I used New Dawn on and just kind of blend out the crease. Going back in with New Wave and just blending that again into the crease. I'm taking a tiny little bit of edge just to kind of like add a little bit more yellow to the crease, and sure, why not add as many shadows as I can, because I mean I have them. Okay, next up I'm going to take this INGLOT brush, and this is the 48SS, and I'm going to go in with this shade here, which is called Untamed. A little bit of kickback off that so you can kind of see it there. Not too much. I'm going to place this in my outer corner of my eye and kind of blend it in. I'm just going to take a little bit of Axis and just put it all over the top of it just to see what happens. I'm very carefully trying to keep this below the crease. I'm just going to blend it out. I am taking New Wave again. I'm just going to put it over top just to kind of blend out that line. I just feel like it's a little bit harsh. Okay guys, so far I'm actually not too displeased with the quality of the shadows and the look that I've got. Okay, it's taken a lot to kind of just blend out that green. I'm gonna go in with Adorn, I think. This shade here, this kind of like, I don't know what it is. It's kind of like a coppery gold shade. So I'm just going to apply that onto the lid. There's obviously not as much kickback on this shadow as the other ones because this is not matte. So I'm just blending this back and forth through the green just to kind of make it a little bit more seamless on the eye, I guess. Finally, I think for the lid shades, I'm gonna go in with Electric. When I saw this initially in the pictures, I was like, ugh, that's a disgusting color. But now seeing it in real life, I'm kind of a little bit intrigued. It has a very unusual formula, guys. It's like it's foiled or something. My brush is not really picking up that much product and it's kind of sticky or something. Pretty cool shade, I'm not gonna lie, I quite like that. Just gonna put a little bit of Fix Plus on my brush. Yeah, that seems to be working a little bit better. I'm gonna go back in with that INGLOT brush and just kind of blend out the harsh lines. I'm just gonna bring the yellow back there. I am liking the shades so far and I think they look pretty nice. I'm gonna take this INGLOT little brush. This is the 49SS and I'm gonna go in with Cube. It's the only kind of highlighting shade in this, and again, I didn't like this when I saw the pictures. I'm just gonna pop that in the inner tear duct. I knew this kind of had like a pinky hue off it. I'm still not crazy about it, but it is what it is. Very sheer, like it's, you really gotta dig your brush into it to get a bit of payoff. My brows are horrendous, lads. Do you know what? I hate that shade, that Cube shade. I hate it so much. Pass on that, and I'm just gonna put a different highlighting shade underneath the brow. Rightio guys, I'm just gonna finish off the look. I'm gonna go back in with Untamed. I'm just gonna take this on the same INGLOT brush and just place this underneath my lower lash line. And then taking Adorn, again, I'm just going to place that underneath the rest of my lower lash line. Now I'm going to do mascara, lashes, finish off the rest of the face, and I'll come back to you guys. Okie doke guys, we have the Subculture palette here. You can see that mine is already grubby and we only have this about 2 hours. This is what the inside of the palette looks like. You've got your big mirror up at the top and these are what the shades look like. As I showed in the tutorial, I used New Wave, Edge, Untamed, Axis, Adorn, Electric, Dawn and Cube. So I used 8 of the shadows, which I think was a good mix of shadows. So now I'm going to swatch them for you so that you can see exactly what the shadows look like. So I'm going to go with Cube first. I did not like this shadow. You can see that it's like a duochrome and it does not swatch the best either. The next shade is Dawn, beautiful shade, and I used that on my eye. Got Destiny, which swatched quite nicely actually. Adorn, which I loved this on my eye. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful shade and swatches quite nice actually. All Star, again, swatched amazingly. Mercury, these swatches are just out of this world. They're just one finger, just like you can see the pigmentation from them. So this is Axis. Absolutely amazing. So that is the first row. Obviously the swatches are incredible. Like I don't even think the swatches are this good from the Modern Renaissance palette. This is just out of this world. You can see the kick up already just there, and I haven't used a brush. Like it's much worse in Axis when I actually use a brush. Mercury, All Star and Destiny weren't too bad actually. Okay, so now I'm going to swatch the next shade. So we've got Roxy. Wow, super pigmented. Electric was one of the poorest pigmented shadows I found on my eyes. Swatches pretty poorly, so I'm just going to try and build it up a little bit. And I had to use Fix Plus with it, so I don't know. Now I'm going to go in with Fudge. Fudge is the only repeated shade that they have. They've also brought Fudge out in another palette, so it's the only repeat shadow in the palette. New Wave, this one gave me an awful lot of kick up. Beautiful, beautiful shadow. I noticed that it's kind of like around the perimeters of the shade. It's kind of like a little bit darker. Don't know if you noticed that from the swatch. Next I'm going to go in with Untamed. Beautiful. Now Edge. Again, it kind of swatches a bit darker around the perimeters, which I think is a bit strange. And then finally Rowdy. Look at that pigmentation, guys. That is just insane. There isn't a bit of skin coming through that. There you go. That's the swatches of this entire palette. I know a lot of you want to see a comparison of the new Subculture palette and the Renaissance palette, so there's the comparisons. Whole video dedicated to it, which I'll link in the description bar below. So that is the Renaissance palette. You can see the selection of colors there. Here we have all 14 shades from the Subculture palette. Even just doing the swatches, this one is so much superior in pigmentation. But again, I feel like that could be a downfall to it. And you can see like the kickback from some of the shadows. However, I do find that the Subculture palette, because it's so pigmented, the tendency to make the shadows look a bit muddy or more difficult to blend kind of arises. But this is definitely a different formula. These shadows, so much creamier, buttery, powdery, not powdery, but there's like a lot more pigment in them than in the Renaissance palette. And I think from the swatches you can kind of see that. I did the same pressure on both. These are insanely pigmented. But again, we know that the Renaissance palette is incredibly pigmented as well. I'm not taking away from that. The Subculture is even more pigmented. And now I'm going to give you my full and frank thoughts on this palette, just from applying it to my eye and from the swatches, etc. Bearing in mind, guys, this is the first time I've ever used this palette. I've only used 8 of the actual shadows on my eyeballs, so I can only kind of judge how they performed on my eyes. So I'm just going to briefly talk about them first, and then I'm going to discuss a little bit more about the swatches. For starters, the colour Electric and Cube are very poor pigmentation in my opinion. Cube, I think I just hate that shadow anyway. It's a horrible coloured shadow. It's not my cup of tea in any way, shape or form. It's not a shadow that I would ever gravitate towards or pick or buy. And I actually have a Sigma palette that has a shade quite like this, but it's much better pigmentation and it's in with an awful lot of purples and it just looks better. It pulls the looks together. I just don't feel like this was a great shadow. Electric, poor pigmentation, lovely shade, really, really nice. The actual formula of it is like, again, a foiled shade. It's poor in pigmentation. You need an awful lot of Fix Plus on your brush to actually get this to show up, which I was just a bit disappointed in Electric. Adorn was the best of the two foiled shadows, so that and Electric. It was definitely the best quality for me. It was the best pigmentation. It looks the best on the eye. I didn't need Fix Plus. It worked really, really well for me. Okay, the matte shadows that I use, they have an incredible amount of kick up, guys. That is no surprise. When I was actually doing my foundation, I was listening to other reviews just to kind of see what other people were thinking. Other people were really not liking this palette. I mean, I'll give you my full thoughts in a moment, but there's so many people absolutely hating this palette and saying that they got duds and that their palette is definitely not up to the standards. Some people had hit pan. I saw a girl who hit pan on Axis, and then obviously Alyssa Ashley hit pan on Roxy, and I was just like, wow, that's not cool. I don't think I would hit pan on any of these shadows. I'd have to really kind of dig them out. So perhaps they actually did get dud palettes, but for me, my palette is not like that at all. Like, it is very powdery. Like, I'll show you, for instance, we'll say New Wave. If I kind of swirl my brush around like that, it is quite powdery, and you can see the kick up that it is giving. Like, you can see that kick up there. It's incredibly bad. Like, it's pretty bad. Like, and if I keep doing that, it's going to keep falling. I'm obviously not going to continue to do that because I don't want to waste my product, but you will waste a ton of product doing that. Like, look at all that product there on my hand. Like, that's ridiculous. But you honestly don't need to swirl your brush around like that. Like, there's way too much product on my brush right now, and even if I just put it on the back of my hand, like, you don't need that much product, you know what I mean? So those big swatches you don't need. People are just testing out the shadows. Like, you can even see all the powder coming off the brush there. Extreme kick up. I've never seen anything like it in a palette. You really have to blow the extra shadows off the palette after you use each shadow. But what I was doing was just literally taking my brush and tapping it in like the slightest amount, and I feel like that worked for the eye look that I created today. However, just in comparison to the Modern Renaissance, you do not, like, I've had this a year and I've only just started to hit pan on Burnt Orange. That's my most used shadow. Like, if I go in, we'll say with Veterinary Red, it's gonna give a bit of kick up too. So you can see the kick up as well from the Modern Renaissance palette. It does do that also, but definitely not to the extent, like, you saw how much was falling when I was doing that, whereas you're not getting as much fallout, or maybe you are, I don't know. You're getting a bit, I guess. So I don't know, maybe people didn't notice that with the Modern Renaissance palette. Like, it is giving an awful lot of kick up itself. So did people not notice that? I don't know. Noreen, I think it's Noreen, the daughter of the lady who created Anastasia, she did say that these shadows are incredibly pigmented. I get that, I fully understand that, but INGLOT shadows are one of the most pigmented formulas I've ever used. Makeup Geek's quite pigmented, and I don't get anything like the kick up that I'm getting from this palette. Even the Modern Renaissance doesn't give as much of a kick up as this palette. It's incredibly powdery, but if you use a slight bit, like tap your brush into it, you get a good payoff of color. Like with Untamed, I needed a tiny amount, same with Access, to apply onto my eye. Now, in my opinion, from using the palette, Access and Untamed were the worst shadows on my eye for me. Like, I kind of struggled to get them to blend out. They look a tiny bit patchy on my eyes at the moment. Like, you can see that there. I'm not amazing at eyeshadow. I know, I get it. I'm not a makeup artist or anything like that. But I feel like the majority of us aren't makeup artists. The majority of us who are going to be buying this palette are just, you know, buying it for the love of makeup and not for our ability to apply makeup. We want it to be really easy and really straightforward. I find that you get that with the Modern Renaissance palette. It's quite easy, straightforward. I feel like anybody could use it. Again, it's a very pigmented, so a little bit of the product goes a long way. Whereas I find with this, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, remember, it's not exactly beginner friendly. So I feel like if you were a beginner with makeup, this may not be your favorite palette to pick up. The shadows are quite unique. Like, that's what I love about it. I have so many warm shades in my collection. I have so many, you know, oranges and reds and pinks, and I've nothing kind of like this with the greens and yellows and deep purples. As palettes go, it is quite unique, but I feel like the kick up from the shadows can be a huge turn off. Now, was it worth the money? To me, yes, it was worth the money. Like, I won't be returning this or anything like that. However, if you did get a dud, I'm doing dud inverted commas because I don't know if Anastasia like have they taken any responsibility for some of the palettes that are not great? I don't know yet. But if they have, I feel like if you did get a dud palette, you would be highly disappointed in this palette, like highly disappointed. I'm not, because I think the shadows work quite well. Again, bar these two blending on my eyes, like New Wave went on great, Edge, Dawn went on lovely. I feel like Adorn went on great. Electric, once my brush was wet, went on beautifully. I need to do another tutorial using Roxy, Fudge, and I think Rowdy. That's another one that kind of people were kind of complaining about and saying that they weren't working really well, so I definitely need to do another tutorial using that. My all in all of this palette, I feel like it is worth the money if these shadows are worth it to you. However, if there's duds floating around, that is not a risk that I'm willing to take for $42. Thankfully, I don't think I got a dud. It seemed to work quite well on my eyes. It blended out nicely. I feel like the pigmentation is just spot on. Like, it was just right there. The pigmentation was right there, except for these two green shades, which are just extremely difficult to use on the eye. However, I do know from doing my research that these type of green shades are quite difficult to formulate and contain the pigmentation also, so that may be a reason why they can be a bit patchy on the eye. I like the palette. I just feel like there's so much kind of controversy going around this palette, and I just feel like that's kind of a really off-putting thing for me. I couldn't avoid it. I mean, even when I went onto Twitter, I was seeing like comments like, this palette's crap and there's so much kickback and it's a dud and X, Y, and Z about this palette, so it was impossible for me to avoid that. And then even when I received it this morning, I was kind of a little bit afraid and skeptical, and I had not watched any YouTube videos other than Alyssa Ashley's, and she had a terrible time with this palette. And then when I watched other tutorials this morning, I found that some people were actually enjoying the palette. Some people were, you know, they didn't think that the quality was too bad, and I found that myself. So I do feel like there could possibly be duds going around and that people are getting them, which is just awful. But Anastasia, I believe from what I've heard just from the last video I watched, now I don't know if this is confirmed by Anastasia, but that they are taking back any palettes that people weren't happy with, so I hope that helps. Actually, I did watch a video from Raw Beauty Christy. She's the last video I actually watched, and she did like a patch test, or kind of like swirling some of the shadows around to see how the pigmentation kind of latched onto certain areas. So I'm actually going to do that myself just with my palette, just because I noticed hers was extremely patchy and I didn't find that as much with mine. So I'm going to take this brush here again because I use New Wave in it, so I may as well go in with New Wave again. New Wave is getting an awful doing today. Like, I feel like I'm gonna have no shadow left from New Wave. I'm going to just apply that on my wrist here and just going to swirl the shadow around, because I did notice that hers was grabbing onto areas and the lines outside the shadow were not blending well. However, I don't see that that's the same with my shadow. So that's what leads me to think that there's different formulations of shadows going around, or duds as it were. So you can see that there. I don't know, like, is it evident on camera? I can't really tell. Like, is it grabbing onto certain areas? Can you guys see? It doesn't appear to be, and appears to be blending out quite well on my wrists. But again, I can kind of see on the camera where there's a little bit of patchiness. All right, I'm just gonna go in with an INGLOT eyeshadow now. I'm just gonna take this really bright pink shadow. You can see like there's a little bit of kick up from even the INGLOT shadows, but definitely not as much as the Anastasia. So I'm gonna just place that underneath. These are obviously not the same. Sorry guys, I'm just taking a different brush because that other brush is really bad. So again, just going in with that same shadow. And you can see, like, you know, this is obviously a lot more pigmented. You get more shadow around the surface area. You're not getting the pigmentation that the Anastasia one would give. But I don't know, I don't feel like mine is too patchy, like the New Wave shade. It's definitely not too patchy, but again, might show up a bit patchier on camera. I know that Christy did do that test, and I will leave the link to her channel down below just so you can check it out, because she definitely had quite clear perimeters of where she placed the shadow down, and then you can see where it wasn't blending around the edges. Like, I don't know, is that coming across the same on mine? I don't know. Anyway guys, they are my full thoughts on the Subculture palette. This is probably a bit of a longer video, more than usual. I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. This is definitely a required taste. I think it's like Marmite. You're either going to love it or you're going to hate it. However, I do feel like the kickback from the shadows is definitely a downer for me and not something that I want from an eyeshadow palette, to be kicking back that much. I get that it's trying to be highly pigmented, but I'm going to lose a hell of a lot of shadows with them just falling all over the palette itself and down your face and stuff. So a little bit of this goes a long way. And even when I was doing my eye look, I noticed just a dab, a tiny bit, will give you a little bit more pigmentation. But guys, that is my full review on this palette. Definitely guys, if you want any more information or you want to ask me any questions about this palette, leave them in the comment section below. Yeah, let me know if the Subculture palette is going to be something you are going to run out and buy. Will you? Will you? And yeah, I will talk to you guys in my next video then. I love you guys so much. Mwah. Bye!